Hi, this is Arthur. You're listening to Shannon Watts on Two Bloods Talking Politics. You can find our podcast on twoblodstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found. Enjoy!
Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. I am on with my co-host Sophy. Hey Sophie.
Hey Kelly.
And today we are thrilled to be joined by Shannon Watts, who's the founder of Moms Demand Action. Hi Shannon.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. So it was perhaps a little bit of a rough weekend for you. We're talking on Monday, and so this will be airing on Wednesday, but we're talking on Monday. And Mother's Day weekend, the NRA decided to attack you.
That's right, starting on Wednesday. And again, this is something we've never seen before. I've certainly had NRA spokespeople go after me, but I was pretty shocked on Wednesday when the NRA posted me in 3 different posts on their Instagram feed. They have over 1 million followers. I just made my Instagram page public for a book I have coming out, so I only had about 4,000 followers the day they did that. Then they took that same campaign over to Twitter. And really haven't stopped for about 5 days.
And so why do you think they're going after you? I mean, they've been, why this this pointedly right now?
It's really interesting. I'm not sure I know exactly. I think there is an effort to distract from a lot of the articles that are being written about them, the investigations they're under, the fact that Wayne LaPierre has spent over $500,000 in personal travel and on his wardrobe. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been funneled at a so-called nonprofit organization to friends, family, favored contractors. They recently had a coup in which Oliver North lost and Wayne LaPierre stayed as the organization's leader. So there's so much going on that is negative right now within the NRA. And we know there's a track record of misogyny. So the only thing I can imagine is that, this is sort of payback for the fact that I and Moms Demand Action have been so incredibly successful. In fact, the Washington Post today called us one of the biggest winners of the 2019 state legislative sessions, but also as a distraction.
Tell us a little bit about some of those recent successes with Moms Demand.
Yeah, so, we have been working in state houses ever since that Manchin-Toomey bill failed to pass by a handful of senators in 2013. And that was a bipartisan bill that would have closed the background check loophole. It would have required a background check on every single gun sale in the country. And when that failed, we pivoted and started doing this work in state houses, knowing that often Congress is where this work ends and not where it begins. And we've had huge success. We have every year about a 90% track record of killing bad NRA bills. And we've passed hundreds of good bills, keeping guns out of the hands of domestic abusers, requiring safe storage, red flag laws, which allow family and police to get a temporary restraining order if someone appears to be a danger to themselves or others. Just a whole host of stronger gun laws. And in fact, after the Parkland shooting tragedy, when this became a very major conversation in the zeitgeist of America, we tripled in size as an organization. We now have hundreds of thousands of volunteers on the ground in every single state. And we were able to take that power and parlay it into political wins. So last year, 2018, was the best year we've ever had in terms of passing stronger gun laws. 20 states passed stronger gun laws. 9 of those laws were signed by Republican governors. And then we parlayed that into electoral power. We outspent and outmaneuvered the NRA in the midterm elections. We elected over 1,000 gun sense candidates across the country. And we were able to flip 7 state legislatures to have what we call gun sense majorities. And we've already gone in and passed stronger gun laws in many of those states. So we've had huge success at the state level over the last more than 6 years.
So I think that starts to answer one of my questions, but what keeps you motivated? What keeps you going, especially in the face of things like the NRA attacking you personally?
Well, I'm a full-time volunteer, and I have been now for over 6 years. And I wake up and do this work every day because we're winning. And I get asked a lot, aren't you numb? Aren't you disappointed? Aren't you dejected? And if you really knew what the wins were on the ground, how many bad laws we've stopped, how many good laws we've passed, the changes we've made in boardrooms. I was just at Levi's last week speaking to over 1,000 employees because that company has made this a major part of their philanthropy. And so when we look at the laws that have been passed, the lives that have been saved, the fact that every single Democratic presidential candidate is competing to be the best on this issue going into 2020, you can see the sea change in American politics on this issue. It is no longer a third rail. And I believe that this will happen in my lifetime. And so that is what kind of keeps me motivated and gets me up every day to start working on this fresh, as well as so many of our volunteers who do this almost as another full-time job.
And I think a lot of people, this is maybe changing some, but especially a lot of women have been afraid of getting attacked on social media. We saw this before the 2016 election, that people were in sort of private Facebook groups and things instead of talking about their beliefs outwardly on social media. Do you have advice for women, especially who, are worried about being attacked or worried about, how to respond when people go after them on social media?
I get that it can be a scary experience. It was for me in the beginning. There was this underbelly of America that I really didn't know existed, that I would immediately have my life threatened, my kids' lives threatened, threats of sexual violence, just because I supported things like background checks. And that took some getting used to. It was uncomfortable and at times frightening, but it's really become white noise to me. And I think the trick is, first of all, block anyone who ever insults you or, engages in ad hominem attacks. Those people should not even have access to anything you say. And so that's just something I do automatically now. The other piece of it is it can be used against the gun lobby. I have, I think, become sort of an expert in taking what they say and do and turning it around and making it a win. I was just talking to the woman who runs my website. My views on my website have gone up 530% since Wednesday. I sold hundreds of books. I couldn't have asked for a bigger gift than the NRA to come after me 2 weeks before my book, Fight Like a Mother, comes out, because it's going to benefit gun violence prevention organizations. I'm donating a majority of the proceeds to groups like Moms Demand Action and others. So it is really about understanding that they attack you because they fear you.
You mentioned your new book, Fight Like a Mother, that's coming out, I think it's May 28th?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, so I am really excited about this because I have had countless calls and outreach from mostly women who say, what you've created here with Moms Demand Action is exactly what I would like to do, maybe on a smaller scale, in my neighborhood or in my community or in my state. And maybe it's around another issue, like the environment or abortion or education or whatever it is. And they want to understand how you create a grassroots movement. And so this is in part how-to manual. It is in part memoir. I talk a lot about who I was and how I started this and the skill set I brought to the table, the skills I needed from all the amazing other women and mothers who have helped me do this, the impact that becoming a full-time volunteer and being busier than I've ever been in my life has had on my marriage and on my parenting. And it's also a manifesto. It's why women in particular are the secret sauce to organizing, and why they need to not only have these skills, but also take them and then use them to run for office. We've had over 40 Moms Demand Action volunteers run for office in November. 17 won. We train them, we encourage them, and that was everything from city council to Congress. Lucy McBath, my former volunteer and colleague at Moms Demand Action, is now a congresswoman in Georgia. So I really think there's a moral imperative right now for women to run for office, and it talks a lot about how that can happen too.
You were talking about all the women who've run for office. I know you're on the board for Emerge America. Have you thought about running for office yourself?
I've certainly thought about it. I feel like I'm getting so much done doing this as opposed to maybe even what I could be doing from Congress that I'm really happy where I am right now. I'm not totally ruling it out. And I know that if I did, the NRA would use everything in its arsenal, so to speak, to come after me and Moms Demand Action. But I also know that I have this grassroots army of badass women who would have my back. So I'm not ruling it out, but for right now, I feel like so much change has happened, and we're really on the precipice of changing the trajectory of this issue and gun violence in America that I'm really happy and excited to stay the course.
Speaking of all that change, you mentioned some of the successes that you've had, and they're frequently woman-driven, and we know from the 2018 election that we've seen a huge upswing in women running for office, getting involved in the political process, getting involved in particular issues. What do you think is sort of the source of this huge upswell in women's grassroots movements?
I think women felt so angry. I mean, I think we were headed in this direction anyway, but after the election in 2016, what happened to Hillary Clinton, the election of Donald Trump, really seeing the impact of not having a seat at the table has made women feel that they have an imperative to run for office, that they have a responsibility to protect themselves, their families, but also other women. And that is what has been so encouraging, is that women are really answering this clarion call. And, women for so long have only had really 2 or 3 levers of power to pull: their voices, their votes, their spending power. We pull all of those levers at Moms Demand Action, but we really need to be making the laws and the policies that impact the safety of our families and communities. And, I'll be honest with you, I spend a lot of time in state houses, and they are 80% men. I wouldn't trust many of them to make me a cup of coffee, let alone make the laws that my family's safety depends on.
I think a lot of popular media really forever has had trouble envisioning women's groups, women's friendships. One thing that has struck me at the Moms Demand Action events I've been to, and I went to one of the state legislative days, is just how much of a community it really is. These deep friendships that have been formed among the women who are involved, and like you say, they really have your back. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect of Moms Demand, and if that was something that you sort of expected at all going in?
Oh, I love that observation. It has been overwhelming and amazing. I'm an only child. I'm an introvert. I've moved around a lot. I've never had so many friends in my life. And that is what has been so incredible to me, this idea of finding your tribe. And some of that is just lightning in a bottle, that, these women were able to gravitate and find one another, especially in the reddest of states, and feel like they had a home. I have met so many women that I thought were friends their entire lives who said, no, I just met this person through Moms Demand Action a year or 2 ago, and they're going on vacations together. And I also think that social media makes us feel like we know one another. And then every single year we have something called Gun Sense University. I can remember the first year we did it in 2014, we had 60 people there. Last year we had over 1,500, and it was only half of our leadership volunteers. This year in August, we're going to be doing it in Washington, D.C. And it's just such an amazing opportunity for these women who know each other or feel like they know each other from all across the country to get together and solidify those relationships. And the other amazing thing that I've seen happen over the last 6 years is that women are getting tattoos, whether it's of our logo or our name or something that says One Tough Mother. So many of them have these permanent tattoos because they feel empowered. And I think that really is what fosters these relationships. And this, sorority sometimes has pejorative connotations, but I do think it has become the sisterhood And that is something I never could have predicted.
So your children are all a little bit older now, as Sophie and I have young sons. Do you have advice for mothers of younger children? So my kids are 7 and 4 and Sophie's son is 3, sort of thinking about our kids going to school, thinking about our sort of raising our kids to be strong and fierce, but, also being very mindful of what the world is really like right now.
Mm-hmm. So many of our new volunteers come to us, and I want to be clear that we're no longer just mothers. We say we're mothers and others, much like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. We welcome all caring Americans, men, non-moms, etc. But so many of them come into the fold not because they've necessarily been impacted by gun violence, but because they've had to send their toddlers or their kindergartners to either daycare, preschool, or kindergarten. And those very tiny children have had to be a part of what can be very traumatizing lockdown drills. The idea that you are going to hide in your bathroom closet and a piece of wood is going to protect your child from the spray of an AR-15 strikes fear into the heart of every single parent. That is often why they join our organization, because they think, I've got to do something. This is so scary and so absurd. We act as though gun violence is an act of nature, that it can't be prevented, when in reality, we know that it is a man-made act of cowardice. You look at any other high-income country, we have 25 times higher gun homicide rate than any peer nation. And so this is just unacceptable, and that is why so many people come into the fold, because they don't want their children to have to endure lockdown drills.
We are talking not so long after yet another school shooting. There was a school shooting in Colorado. If people are looking at that, are thinking about, sending their own kids and worrying about that, what are some of the things that you would suggest that they do? How do they join Moms Demand Action? What are some of the ways that you want them to get involved and to act on this?
Yeah, I am a Colorado parent. 2 weeks ago, I woke up to a text saying that my son didn't have school. He was one of 500,000 kids across the state kept home because an 18-year-old was able to fly from Miami to Denver, buy a long gun and ammo, and terrorize an entire state. And parents had to grapple with how to tell their children what happened. Children had to grapple with whether they were safe in schools. And then just a couple weeks later, there was this horrific school shooting in Denver. And it sounds like these teens were able to take the guns from a set of parents. And that just really brings in all of the issues that we work on. We do work to raise the age limit at which someone can buy a gun from 18 to 21. We do talk about responsible gun storage through a program called Be Smart. And if you're interested in talking about responsible gun storage with family or friends that you send your kids over for play dates, go to besmartforkids.org. 4.5 million children live in this country with unsecured guns, meaning they're unlocked and loaded, which is really a terrifying prospect. And all of the different pieces that we organize around, including background checks, including red flag laws, many of these things could come into play in these shootings. So I know that we only win when there are strength in numbers. For so long, this vocal minority has been afraid that their guns are going to be taken away. But as parents, we're afraid our children will be taken away. There's 80 million moms in this country, the vast majority of whom support stronger gun laws. So it is about getting off the sidelines. It is about becoming a vocal majority. And you can do that. You can go to our website, momsdemandaction.org. Our Twitter handle is @momsdemand. And you can text JOIN to 64433. We try to make it very simple to get involved and get active and use your time wisely.
I saw a piece that you wrote recently about Nancy Pelosi and some of the things that you've learned from her. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that. I recently saw Nancy Pelosi speak just last week, actually, and she's just so inspirational. And I really like this thought of sort of looking to her. You know, people tend to, much like you, in fact, you know, demonize her about certain things, but looking to her as sort of a source of inspiration for mothers.
Yeah, that was really an honor to be able to interview her in San Francisco at the Wing. She has been an inspiration to me from the very beginning. When we had a press conference in 2013 around the Manchin Toomey bill, we were not even 6 months old, and here I was, this stay-at-home mom from Indiana, and she welcomed us with open arms to have a press conference. She stood at our side. I can remember she whispered in my ear, you know, you should be so proud. Mothers will get this done. And she has been with us every step of the way for the last 6 years, regardless of what position she was in. And by championing gun safety, she made sure that just 5 days into this new congressional session, that a background checks bill was introduced and passed through the House. It's called H.R. 8. You know, we're waiting for the Senate to take it up. But several pieces of gun safety legislation have passed the House already this year. And I know without a doubt that she will make this happen. To me, she's so incredibly inspiring. She was a mom of 5 when she became a congresswoman in her late 40s. And she is so not intimidated, nor does she care about the blowback that she gets on anything. People, mostly men, are afraid of her and her power. And she talks a lot about how being a mom gave her the skill set she needed to negotiate and to manage her time and to multitask. And I think those same characteristics are exactly why Moms Demand Action has been so successful, because our volunteers inhabit those skills as well.
I love when she says, and you say this in your piece about her too, when she says, know your why. That seems so powerful to me, to think that if you know why you're fighting, you keep going, you know. And I think for so many of us who are moms, you know, our kids are a big part of our why, and that's what keeps us going and what keeps us fighting, you know, for things like gun sense, but also for things like climate change, you know, that knowing that there's something that lives on beyond you is really a powerful motivator.
I totally agree with that. You know, I had this really interesting conversation recently with Soraya Shamali. She's a feminist who's written the book Rage Becomes Her. And we talked about the double-edged sword of being a mom and being an activist, because on one hand, you shouldn't have to be a mom. You should just be able to have credibility as a woman. But we know that in America, ever since Prohibition, that in order to be a woman and an activist, you can't really be fighting about your own anger. You're fighting because you're angry on behalf of your children. And that is just an incredibly powerful emotion and a motivator. And we also have to be pragmatic. You know, she talks about how this is the reality in 2019, that candidates want our volunteers to stand with them in their red shirts as moms, because we're the majority of the voting public. And it is sort of the secret sauce to organizing. And my favorite quote is a quote actually by Agatha Christie. And she says, "A mother's love for her child is like nothing else in the world. It knows no law, no pity. It dares all things and crushes down remorselessly all that stands in its path." And I think that's exactly right on, no matter what the issue is. You should not get in a mother's way when she is on a mission to protect her child.
Remind us how to get your book.
Yeah, it would be great if people would pre-order. Pre-orders help make the book a bestseller, get it on television, and get it noticed. As I said, a majority of the proceeds will go to nonprofit gun violence prevention organizations. So we're hopeful that it will do well. And also it sticks a pen in the eye of the NRA, which I'm all about that. But it is available May 28th. You can go to fightlikeamother.org and pre-order or order the book. And for those who order 10 or more copies, save your receipt and check the box online. And I'm happy to do a virtual event with you or your book club.
Excellent. And you did the audio for the audiobook, right?
I did audio for an audiobook that is available at Audible. It's also available on Amazon. That was a really interesting experience. It took many cough drops and throat coats, but I thought that was a really, really fun part of it. And also, you can look on fightlikeamother.org and see where I will be doing book events. I'm very excited to have an event with Deborah Messing in New York at the Barnes & Noble, and with Karen Tumulty of the Washington Post, Politics and Prose in Washington, D.C., and a lot of others. So go online, and I hope to see you there.
All right. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for everything.
Yeah,
really,
you.
You've been hugely inspirational to me and to so many women I know. And thank you for speaking with us today.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Wethlin and was created for use by this podcast.